I said no to babysitting my sister's kids. So she dumped them in a taxi to my address anyway, except the driver got it wrong. 3 days later, I got the call that destroyed her. You ever notice how some people treat family helps family like a magic spell that excuses anything they do? That's my sister, Victoria. I said no to babysitting her kids for one weekend. Just once. After years of dropping everything whenever she called. So, she decided to put her 2 children in a taxi, alone, and send them across New York City to my apartment, without even checking if I'd be there. And of course, because this is real life and not some cute movie, the driver got the address wrong. He took them to the same street number, same street name, but the wrong side of town, at a building that didn't even have the apartment she'd written down. 2 scared kids, 8 and 5 years old, were left standing on a random Manhattan sidewalk with a note that had my name and a broken address. A neighbor saw them crying and called the police. I was at home, sipping coffee and getting ready for a professional conference I'd been excited about for months, when my phone rang from an unknown number. Is this the resident of apartment 12C at 847 Riverside Drive? My stomach dropped. The officer on the line told me they had 2 minors at the precinct who said their names were Olivia and Mason, my niece and nephew. That was the moment everything shifted. My quiet Saturday morning turned into a police report, a CPS investigation, and, eventually, the court case that shattered my sister's perfect little princess life. But this didn't come out of nowhere. This wasn't one mistake or a moment of panic. This was years of entitlement, favoritism, and me being trained to sacrifice for my sister, finally crashing into a hard, immovable wall. My boundary. And the worst part is, the only people who paid the price in that moment were 2 terrified kids who never asked for any of this. To really understand how it got that bad, you have to start with how our family works, or doesn't. My name is Gwen, and in my family, I was never the main character. That role has always belonged to my sister, Victoria. From the time we were little, our parents, Dorothy and Kenneth, made it very clear who the star was. Victoria was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. I was the reliable one, the one who understood, the one expected to bend. When we were kids, we each had our own bedroom upstairs. Mine was small but bright, with a big window that got the afternoon sunday. I loved that room. It felt like my one little corner of the world. Then Victoria decided my room had better lighting for her makeup and photos. I came home from school one day to find my bed half taken apart and my stuff piled in the hallway. "Gwen, be a good sister," my mom said, like it was already decided. "Victoria needs the space more than you do. You can take the room in the basement." The basement was colder, darker, and smelled like detergent and dust. When I tried to say I didn't want to move, my dad just smiled and said, "You're stronger. Your sister's more sensitive." That was the pattern. Whatever Victoria wanted, she got. Whatever I lost, I was expected to swallow. It only got worse as we got older. In high school, I worked hard, kept my head down, and managed to qualify for a scholarship fund to help with college. It was one of the first things that felt truly mine. Then there was suddenly a problem with Victoria's tuition. My parents sat me down and explained, gently, that we needed to use my scholarship money to cover a gap in her payments. "It's just how family works," my mom said. "You'll be fine, you're so resilient," my dad added, like that was a prize. So Victoria went off to the expensive school she wanted, fully covered. I went to a more modest college with loans and a part-time job, told again and again how proud they were of my sacrifice. That's the environment that raised both of us. Victoria learned the world would bend rather than tell her no. I learned that if I ever did say no, I'd be treated like the problem. By the time we were adults, that dynamic hadn't gone anywhere. It just put on nicer clothes. Victoria married a real estate developer named Nathan when she was 24. He treated her like a princess and bankrolled the lifestyle our parents had always promised her she deserved. They had 2 kids, Olivia and Mason. And let me be clear, I adore those kids. None of this is their fault. They're sweet, funny, and way more patient than any child should have to be. But somewhere along the way, Victoria decided that having children didn't mean being a parent every day. About a year ago, She got really into what she called me time. Me time meant spa weekends, shopping trips, wine tastings, last-minute getaways. And every time she wanted to disappear for a while, she just assumed I would step in as the free, on-demand babysitter. She'd call me with almost no notice. "Hey, can you take the kids this weekend?" Nathan surprised me with a trip. No hello. No, are you free? Just an expectation. At first, I said yes. A lot. I rearranged plans, dragged my laptop to her place so I could keep working while the kids watched cartoons, skipped my own social life because, in my head, that old script was still playing. Family sacrifices. You're stronger. You'll be fine. But the more I said yes, the less she even pretended to ask. There were times she called the night before a big presentation or a long-planned event and acted shocked if I hesitated. The guilt trips always sounded the same. "Wow, I wish I had your free time. Must be nice not having kids. You have no idea how hard this is. Family helps family, Gwen. What's more important than your niece and nephew?" The thing is, I times do times care about my niece and nephew. That's why this got so twisted. She wrapped her demands in their names. Like refusing her was the same as abandoning them. The last straw started on a random Thursday afternoon. I was in the middle of a critical presentation at work, potential new client. Big deal. The kind of thing you don't walk away from. My phone started buzzing over and over on my desk. When I finally stepped out and answered between sections, it was Victoria. "No hello, no check-in. I need you to watch the kids this weekend," she said, like she was assigning me a task. "I can't," I told her. "I have plans." "Cancel them. Nathan booked us a surprise trip to Vermont. We leave tomorrow morning." My jaw literally clenched. I could feel my pulse in my teeth. "Victoria, I'm asking you to find someone else. I have a work commitment I can't reschedule." Her tone went cold in an instant. "You're so selfish. Family is supposed to help family. What's more important than your niece and nephew?" "This isn't about them," I said. "This is about you assuming I have no life of my own." She hung up on me. I took a deep breath, put my phone down, and went back into my meeting thinking, okay, she's mad. She'll cool off. I honestly thought that was the end of it. Saturday morning rolled around cool and quiet. I was at home, in my pajamas, reviewing notes for the professional conference I'd registered for months in advance. It was a big deal for my career panels, networking, all of it. I made coffee, opened my laptop, and actually felt calm. For once, I'd held a boundary. I felt a little guilty, sure, but also weirdly proud. Around that time, some part of my brain did wonder, so what did Victoria end up doing about the kids? I assumed she'd found another sitter, or Nathan's parents, or just canceled her trip like any normal parent would if childcare fell through. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. New York area code. Normally I might have let it go to voicemail, but something in my gut told me to pick up. "Hello? Is this the resident of apartment 12C at 847 Riverside Drive?" a man's voice asked. Very official. My stomach pulled tight. "Yes, this is she. Who's calling?" "This is Officer Garrett Mills with the NYPD. We have 2 minors here who were found alone outside an apartment building. They had a note with this address." Everything in me went cold. "I'm sorry, what? What are you talking about?" He explained that a taxi driver had dropped off 2 children, around 8 and 5, at 847 Riverside Drive. The problem? That building only went up to 8 floors. Their times was times no apartment, 12C. A neighbor had found them crying on the sidewalk and called the police. Ice hit my veins. "Are their names Olivia and Mason?" "Yes," he said. "Olivia and Mason Brennan." My heart dropped straight through the floor. "Yes, those are my niece and nephew. I live at 847 times, West Times, Riverside Drive, apartment 12, C. Is the West missing on the note?" He checked. "Yes, the note only says 847 Riverside Drive. The driver took them to the wrong building." I could barely hold the phone. "Oh my God, are they okay? Are they hurt?" "They're frightened, but physically unharmed," he said. "They're at the 19th precinct. We need a guardian to come pick them up as soon as possible." The conference vanished from my mind. I grabbed my keys and wallet, still in my pajama pants and an old sweatshirt, and ran out the door. The station was buzzing when I got there, phones ringing, officers moving, radios crackling. They led me to a small room where Olivia and Mason were sitting on a bench, holding hands. Olivia's face was streaked with dried tears. Mason was clutching his stuffed dinosaur like someone might take it away. When Olivia saw me, she launched herself into my arms. "Aunt Gwen!" She sobbed into my shoulder. I wrapped both of them up and felt this mix of relief and pure, burning anger. "You're safe now," I told them. "I've got you. I'm here." Officer Mills came in with paperwork. He asked who I was, how I was related, and where their parents were. And that was the moment it hit me. I had no idea where Victoria even was. She asked me to babysit. I admitted, my voice tight. I told her no. I didn't know she planned to send them here anyway. His expression hardened. "So she sent 2 minors alone in a taxi, without confirming someone would be there to receive them?" Apparently, yes. Yes, she had. That's when he said the words, child endangerment. And that's when my phone started ringing again with Victoria's name on the screen. As I was sitting there in the precinct with 2 shaking kids glued to my sides, my phone started buzzing again. Victoria. The first time, I hit decline. It rang again immediately. Officer Mills glanced at the screen and raised an eyebrow. "You should probably take that," he said, "on speaker, if you don't mind." I answered. "What the hell did you do?" She snapped before I could say anything. "Where are my kids?" "The taxi driver said he dropped them off hours ago." I closed my eyes, counted to 3. "Your kids," I said slowly, "are at a police station, because you put them in a cab to an address that doesn't exist." Silence. Then a disbelieving laugh. "What are you talking about? I sent them to your apartment. I live at 847 Times, West Times, Riverside Drive, apartment 12C. You wrote down 847 Riverside Drive. No east, no west." The driver took them to a completely different building that doesn't even have a 12C. They were left on the sidewalk alone until a neighbor called the police. Instead of sounding horrified, she went straight to defensive. "Don't you dare lecture me. This is your fault for not agreeing to help." I had no choice. I actually laughed, but there was nothing funny about it. "You had 1,000 choices that didn't involve abandoning your children on a random street, Victoria." Officer Mills held out his hand for my phone. I passed it to him. "Mrs. Brennan, this is Officer Garrett Mills with the NYPD," he said, his tone firm and professional. "Your children were found unattended on a public sidewalk. We are filing a child endangerment report. You and their father need to return to the city immediately." I couldn't hear her side, but from his face, it wasn't cooperative. "That is not optional, ma'am," he said. "Failure to return within 24 hours will result in this case being referred to Child Protective Services." He ended the call, handed the phone back, and turned back to the paperwork. That was the moment I knew this was bigger than a fight between sisters. The rest of that day was a blur of forms, signatures, and phone calls. I called Nathan directly. He answered on the second ring. "What's going on?" he asked, voice already tight. "Victoria said you were watching the kids." "I wasn't," I said. "I told her no. She put them in a taxi with my address written wrong. They were left outside a building across town. The police called me." There was a long, horrible pause. I never would have left if I'd known," he said finally. "She told me everything was arranged. We're coming back right now." Not long after, my mother called. She didn't ask if the kids were okay. She didn't even say hello. "What have you done?" Dorothy shrieked. "You're tearing this family apart." "Mom," I said, exhausted, "your daughter put 2 children in a cab to a wrong address and left them on a street corner alone in New York City. I'm not the villain here." "You refused to help," she snapped. "What was she supposed to do?" "Oh, I don't know," I said. "Hire a sitter. Ask Nathan's parents. Cancel her trip. Literally anything except gamble with her kids' safety." "You've always been jealous of Victoria," she said. I hung up. There was nothing left to say. Within 48 hours, CPS opened an investigation. A caseworker called me for a statement, and I handed over everything. The call logs showing her demands, and my refusal, the police report, the taxi company's records, and the witness information from the neighbor. I didn't sugarcoat anything, because at that point, this stopped being about who was the golden child and who wasn't. It was about two small kids who deserved better than being treated like luggage. Once CPS got involved, everything escalated fast. They contacted Nathan, interviewed him, pulled the police report, and started piecing together a pattern, not just one incident. Nathan was furious when he fully understood what had happened. Within 3 weeks, he'd hired a family law attorney and filed for divorce, asking for primary custody based on neglect and endangerment. The taxi stunt wasn't a rumor anymore. It was Exhibit A. Victoria, on the other hand, completely unraveled. She called me screaming, left voicemails about how I'd ruined her life, stolen her children, and turned everyone against her. In her mind, none of this was about her choices. It was about me daring to say no and then refusing to help her cover it up. My mother backed her to the hilt. Dorothy sent massive text paragraphs about forgiveness and loyalty, and how a real sister would have lied for Victoria. My father, Kenneth, called once. In that detached way he always handled family drama. "Your mother is very upset," he said, as if that was the biggest problem. "Her grandchildren were left alone on a street corner," I replied. "Maybe her priorities are off." "She made a mistake," he insisted. "No," I said. "She made a choice. Mistakes are accidents. Putting your kids in a cab to an unconfirmed address is a decision." As CPS dug deeper, Dorothy went on a full A-scale PR campaign. She called every relative she could think of with one version of the story, that I was a bitter, childless woman who had weaponized one small mistake to take Victoria's kids away out of jealousy. The messages started pouring in. Cousins I hadn't seen in years, old family friends, people who barely knew me, all suddenly had opinions about how family should stick together. At first, I tried to defend myself. I'd explain what actually happened, send the basic facts, point out that CPS and the police don't launch full investigations over one tiny mistake. But after a while, I just stopped. The people who wanted the truth already had it. Everyone else clearly preferred the version where Victoria was the tragic victim and I was the heartless villain. Work, strangely, became my safe place. My boss noticed I was distracted and called me into her office. When I gave her the short version, she looked horrified. "You potentially saved those kids' lives," she said. "Take whatever time you need for court dates or meetings. We'll work around it." Her support was such a contrast to my own family that it almost hurt. But it also reminded me that not everyone thought I was crazy for refusing to stay quiet. CPS moving in meant this wasn't going to stay just police reports and angry phone calls. Nathan's attorney, a sharp woman named Diane Foster, reached out and asked if I'd be willing to testify. "Victoria's lawyer is going to come for you," she warned me during our first meeting. "They'll say you're jealous, bitter, out to get her. You need to be ready for that." We sat in a quiet conference room with a stack of documents between us. Phone logs, texts, the police report, CPS notes. Diane walked me through the timeline over and over until I could say it calmly from start to finish without my voice shaking. "She called," demanded childcare, with almost no notice. "You said no. She did this anyway," Diane said. "Stay on that. Don't get pulled into side arguments about your childhood or favoritism unless the judge directly asks." Meanwhile, CPS scheduled interviews, home visits, and evaluations. They spoke to Nathan, to Victoria, to the kids, and to people around them. I wasn't part of those sessions, but I heard enough to know it wasn't going in Victoria's favor. The kids told the evaluator about other times they'd felt unsafe. The day Mason was left in a hot car because Victoria just ran in for a minute and lost track of time. The time she forgot to pick Olivia up from school because she was at a hair appointment. When I heard that, the taxi stunt stopped feeling like a wild one-off and started looking exactly like what it was. The worst example in a long pattern of, "My plans matter more than my children." The preliminary custody hearing was set for a gray October morning. Walking into that courthouse felt like walking into a different planet. Marble floors, high ceilings, everyone speaking in low, serious voices. Victoria arrived in a tailored outfit, hair perfect, looking like she was walking into a charity luncheon, not a custody case. She wouldn't look at me. Nathan was there too, along with his parents, who had flown in from out of state. He squeezed my shoulder before we went in. "Thank you for doing this," he said quietly. "I know it's not easy." "Those are my niece and nephew," I told him. "I'd walk through fire for them." When the judge took the bench, the room fell silent. Everything that had been texts, whispers, and private drama suddenly became official, on the record, under oath. And then they called my name. Sitting in that witness chair, facing my sister across the courtroom, was one of the strangest experiences of my life. On one side, there was the version of her I grew up with, the golden child, the favorite. On the other side, there was a thicker folder of documentation that told a different story. Diane started gently. "Miss Mitchell, can you describe your relationship to the children?" "I'm their aunt," I said. "Their mother is my sister." She walked me through the events of that week step by step. The Thursday phone call, my refusal, the guilt trip about family, and the fact that I never agreed to take the kids. Then the Saturday morning, the unknown number, the officer's voice, the words, "two minors, wrong address, no apartment 12C, and we need a guardian to come pick them up." I described walking into the station and seeing Olivia and Mason on that bench, holding hands, faces streaked with tears. I kept my voice as steady as I could, but I didn't try to sound emotionless. They're not just facts on paper to me. They're people I love. "Did your sister confirm your address with you before sending the children?" Diane asked. "No," I said. "If she had, she would have realized what she wrote down doesn't exist as an apartment." "Did she inform you she planned to send them anyway, despite your refusal?" "No," I repeated. "I didn't know they were even in a taxi until the police called." Then it was Victoria's attorney's turn. He stood, straightened his expensive suit, and looked at me like I was something under his shoe. "Miss Mitchell," he began, "isn't it true that you've always resented your sister's success?" "No," I said calmly. "You're not jealous that she has a family while you're single and childless?" Diane was on her feet in an instant. "Objection. Relevance. Sustained," the judge said sharply. "Counsel, stick to the facts of the case." He shifted tactics. "How many times have you watched your niece and nephew in the past?" "Dozens," I said. "Over the years." "So you've established a pattern of helping your sister with childcare," he said. "And on this occasion, you chose work over family." "I chose to keep a professional commitment I'd made months in advance over a last-minute demand that ignored my boundaries," I replied. He tried a few more angles, suggesting I was exaggerating, that maybe I'd agreed and forgotten, that this was all a misunderstanding. But every time, the same hard facts cut through. The phone logs, my clear refusal, the wrong address, the police report, the children found alone. Officer Mills testified too. He described finding the kids, the note, the missing West, and the call with Victoria, where she argued instead of panicking about their safety. By the time he was done, the room felt different. This wasn't a messy family argument. It was negligence. Documented. Repeated. Judge Morrison, a woman in her 60s with a calm but serious presence, looked over the file in front of her. "These are serious allegations," she said. "I am ordering a full custody evaluation before making any final determinations." Her gavel came down. The hearing ended. But the war over Olivia and Mason's future had only just started. The custody evaluation process dragged on for weeks, and it touched every part of their lives. Both Nathan and Victoria had to sit through psychological assessments, home visits, and long, uncomfortable interviews about parenting, routines, and safety. The kids were interviewed separately by a child psychologist who specialized in custody cases. I wasn't in the room, obviously, but later, Olivia told me bits and pieces about what happened. She asked if we felt safe with Mom, Olivia said one night, curled up on my couch with a blanket. I told her about the time Mason got stuck in the car. I knew that story from Victoria's version. She'd just run into the store for a minute and the internet overreacted when someone reported her. Mason's version was different. He told the psychologist he'd been in the back seat, in the heat, with the child locks on, watching strangers walk past while he cried and yelled and no one came. Emergency services records later showed it hadn't been less than 5 minutes, like Victoria always claimed. It was closer to 20. Then there was the day Olivia was left at school. Victoria said she got caught in traffic. Olivia remembered standing on the curb, watching all the other kids get picked up, feeling her stomach twist as the sky got darker and the teachers started making phone calls. There was also the playground incident where Mason climbed too high, fell, and broke his arm. Victoria's story was that she'd looked away for a second. Mason told the evaluator she'd been on her phone taking selfies and texting for a long time, while he tried to get her attention. When the evaluator's report finally came in, it was brutal. It didn't just mention the taxi stunt, it laid out a pattern. Repeated lapses in supervision, consistent prioritization of me time over basic safety, and a worrying lack of insight into what age-appropriate care actually looks like. The taxi incident was described as a severe lapse in judgment that placed the children at significant risk. It was the loudest alarm in a line of smaller warning bells everyone had been trying to ignore for years. And now, all of that was going to be laid out in front of a judge. The final custody hearing didn't feel like the first one. The first had been tense and chaotic, full of unknowns. This time, there was a heavy sense of inevitability in the air. Nathan's parents flew in again. They hugged me in the hallway like we were all bracing for impact. "Whatever happens," his mom said, "thank you for standing up for those kids." Inside the courtroom, Victoria looked carefully put together, subtle makeup, conservative dress, tissue already in hand. If you didn't know anything, you'd think she was the wronged party in some sad, tragic story. She took the stand first. Her attorney guided her gently through her testimony. She cried at the right moments, talked about how deeply she loved her children, and called the taxi stunt a terrible mistake made in a moment of desperation. "I thought I was sending them to my sister's apartment," she said, voice shaking. "I would never intentionally put my children at risk. I regret it every day." Diane's cross-examination cut straight through the performance. "Mrs. Brennan, can you explain why you did not confirm your sister's address before placing your children in a taxi alone?" Victoria stumbled, then fell back on stress and being rushed. She tried to dismiss the other incidents as normal parenting challenges and overreactions, but the evaluator's report and emergency records didn't match her softened versions. "These are not isolated accidents," Diane said. "They are part of a pattern." When it was my turn to testify again, I stuck to specific examples. The night she showed up 2 hours late to pick up the kids from my place because she decided to get a massage. The time she promised to take them to the zoo and bailed halfway through the day for brunch with friends, leaving Nathan scrambling. "Do you believe your sister is incapable of caring for her children?" her attorney asked, pouncing. I took a breath. "I believe she is capable," I said. "But I also believe she consistently chooses her own comfort, image, and convenience over their safety and needs. That makes her dangerous to their well-being." He called it a harsh judgment against your own sister. I called it years of observation. When closing arguments were done, Judge Morrison took some time to review everything, the reports, the testimonies, the history. Then she delivered her ruling. Nathan was awarded primary physical custody. Victoria would have supervised visitation only, with a requirement to complete parenting classes and undergo counseling before the court would even consider changing that. The judge's written opinion talked about a demonstrable pattern of neglect and a fundamental failure to prioritize child safety. In careful legal language, it said what the rest of us already knew. Love isn't enough if your choices keep putting your kids in danger. The ruling didn't just change custody, it shook my entire family tree. Victoria walked out of that courtroom looking like someone had ripped the floor out from under her. She blamed me for all of it. In her mind, it wasn't her choices or the report or the judge, it was me. The sister who should have kept quiet and handled it within the family. Dorothy doubled down. She stopped speaking to me entirely. No calls, no texts, no holiday invitations. If my name came up, it was only as the villain who turned on her own blood. My dad, Kenneth, tried to sit on the fence like always. He'd send the occasional short text. "Hope you're okay. Your mother is still upset," like he was a neutral bystander instead of one of the people who raised us this way. Extended families split into camps. Some quietly reached out to say they understood why I did what I did, even if they couldn't say it out loud around my mother. Others swallowed Dorothy's version whole, and treated me like I'd orchestrated some grand, evil plan. Outside the family bubble, though, the reaction was very different. Parents at Olivia and Mason's school heard bits of the story. They saw Victoria showing up to supervise visits with someone watching her interactions. The same moms who used to flock to her elaborate birthday parties and Instagram perfect events started backing away. Invites dried up. Group chats got quieter. People weren't rude. They were just distant. Nathan, meanwhile, focused on rebuilding some kind of stability for the kids. He kept me in their lives, invited me to birthdays, school events, movie nights. To him, I wasn't the cause of the chaos. I was one of the people who had helped pull the kids out of it. It was a strange, split reality. In one version of the story, the one my mother told, I was the jealous aunt who stole children. In the other, the one backed up by court records and CPS, I was the adult who finally said, enough, when everyone else kept looking away. Both versions existed at the same time, but only one of them kept Olivia and Mason safe. Sometimes people ask if I regret it. If I regret answering the phone, telling the truth, testifying in court, letting it go that far. Here's the thing. When I picture regret, I don't see courtrooms or angry texts from relatives. I see two scared kids standing on a sidewalk with the wrong address on a crumpled note, wondering why no one is coming. My parents always said, family helps family. But what they really meant was, asterisk, we help Victoria, no matter what it costs anyone else. Asterisk. For a long time, I played along. I gave up my room, my scholarship, my time, my peace, because I thought that was what love looked like. I thought being a good daughter and a good sister meant never saying no, even when it hurt. It took watching my sister gamble with her own children's safety for me to finally realize something. Helping someone hurt their kids isn't loyalty. It's complicity. I didn't call CPS. The situation did. The cab ride. The wrong address. The pattern of me first, they'll be fine. The police report. All of that was already in motion long before I ever signed a statement. What I times do was stop covering for her. I stopped smoothing the edges and saying, she's just stressed, or she doesn't mean it. Do I miss having a normal relationship with my parents and my sister? Sure. There are days when the silence is loud and the holidays feel smaller. But then I see Olivia and Mason running around, laughing, knowing they are safe and actually being put first. And I know, deep down, that if I had stayed quiet, asterisk, that times would be the thing I could never forgive myself for. So, what would you have done? Would you have kept the peace and looked the other way? Or drawn a line even if it meant blowing up your family's illusion of loyalty?